I wish I could get this camera back a bit further, but I have no space to work. Very much like yourself in a shed. Now, today we're going to fit the engine. Just a few little things before we get set up. Just check and do as many things to this engine as you can before fitting it, because there's a pain in the bottom to do it later. Now, I just received a new tube for here. Put that on, so that was easy. For the flywheel, I've degreased it. It looks a bit stained, but it's just degreasing. Put a new bush in. We've done that before, and that's a nice tight fit. Look at that. Got my spline ready. All right. What else are we going to do? Let's have a look around the front. You can see here I've got my crank retaining tool on here. That's to remind me that I haven't fastened the nut yet, the bolt that goes in here. I haven't fastened that yet, so what I'm going to do is leave that on as a reminder, so we go in, but also it'll help us sort of tweak it a bit to go onto the spline. Talking about splines, we've got to make sure that the engine, the gearbox is in gear and the handbrake is on, so that when we try and line up these splines, it's going to line up quite easy. Now, talking about lining up splines, my old favourite trick, and it is a top tip. Top tips. I take the studs out of the bottom of the engine mounts. I double nut them and unscrew them. Why? Well, if we look at the, I don't know if we can get this set up right. Oh yeah. You've got to tip up the gearbox to get the engine in, but the problem is the studs hit against the bottom of the engine mounting. See, like this. Even when it's tipped up, it's going to hit. If you take them out, it's a lot simpler. Now, another top tip. I don't know if you can see. Wait a minute. Let's turn the camera around here. Where are we now? Down here. I've put the exhaust pipe in already, and I've tie wrapped it to the steering shaft so it doesn't fall out. Now, I've got a lift, so I can get that back in kind of easy, but if you haven't, and you've got to get it over the cross member and things like that, it's a real pain in the old you-know-what. So what we're going to do now, we've got ourselves, we had 20mm bolts to put the clutch on. Now, I use brand new bolts, these flange heads, and I'm going to put a little bit of Loctite on, which just fell on the floor, so it's costing me a fortune. Let's get set up for that. Right, prior to fitting a clutch, make sure the splines have got a little bit of grease on them, not too much, because you don't want the grease to fly out all over your nice new linings. Now, clutches. On this 300 TDI, and most Land Rovers of this ilk, the 4-cylinder should I say, they can only go on one way. Usually clutches are marked flywheel side, but this one won't go on because it's too big and it won't fit in that hole, so that's good. So we know which way it fits. Like that. That's on. Next thing, we get our clutch. We'll get some bolts, and I've been showing you my bolt. Oh, I got the dowel out. So that's out. I had to warm up the casing a little bit, but it was just like pulling teeth. So we'll pre-Loctite the bolts. We're going to put a little bit of Loctite on. These are brand new, so they're nice and clean. This is just sort of belt and braces, because we don't want them coming out. We don't want to over-tighten them. So what we're going to do first of all, we're going to get our little gun. Just this little gun here, just to start these bolts off. It's not to tighten them down. We're going to use the torque wrench to tighten them down. There it goes. Now eyeball it up. There's guide pins on there. And this. The thing is that if you put a regular 13mm headed bolt in, you have a hard time. Let me put these in, just loose. and then I'll explain why on this top bolt here that you can see. So what I was trying to describe was, if you put a regular headed 13mm bolt in there, you need a very thin wall socket in order to get in. If you use a regular socket, you won't be able to get in. So I like those flange headed bolts because it acts like a washer. And then we don't have to put spring washers on or anything like that. We just put some Loctite on and the job's done. And let me get this last bolt in here. And then we're going to tighten them down evenly, what was it, to 37 Newton meters. I think it's 37. Wait a minute, it's 34, sorry, 34 Newton meters. Set it up and let's do it diagonally opposite. And you'll see the little fingers here. Oh, I'm zoomed in, haven't I? Oops. There we go. You'll see the fingers go in. The actual clutch itself acts like a big spring washer. You shouldn't have to worry too much about these. Right, we've got a ball. Go around them again just in case. See, some of them you get an extra little nip on them, you know what I mean? I like to go around them because this is last chance saloon. Now I haven't turned this over with oil in it yet. I can't get the bloody camera up. Hang on a minute. Ooh, there we go. I haven't turned this over with oil yet. I'm going to do that in the engine. The first job, once you get it in, I'm going to wire it up and then we're going to crank it over and make sure oil's getting through. I didn't do it because I didn't have time. Well, I had plenty of time, but I had no enthusiasm. Right, so that's that done. Don't forget to take this piece out. You know, over these years I've seen so many things, you know, done that makes life difficult. So I'm going to fill the oil filter up now with oil. That's here because it's only just screwed on while I did my smoke test. So I'm going to fill that up with oil to give it a fighting chance. I'm also going to put a little dab of aluminium anti-seize on the studs so that those are not going to get rusty next time it comes out, because you know something's going to come wrong, aren't they? Well, no, it'll go for 1,000 years, this. But all these little prep things, you know, like just putting a bit of anti-seize on there, it just helps a bit. Now, because you don't want, it's very difficult knowing, oh, I've got to sort this bloody stand out, wait a minute, that's better. It's no good. You've got to know where to put anti-seize and where to put Loctite, and it's no good putting Loctite on these bolts here, because once you want to take them off again, say for example you have a problem with your clutch, they're a bitch to get off if you put Loctite on, because they're bad enough to get in at the first place. So these bolts here, these need flat washers, spring washers, and a nut. All right, that'll make life a lot easier. Say for example a gearbox off. You know, you never know when you're going to get a catastrophe. And you don't want them rusting up. So I've got the bolts out the bottom. Oil filter. What else have I got to say? Ooh, most importantly. You can see here I've fitted my wing protectors that I made. I've got the pattern in the shop so you can copy them yourself. They just help when you're putting the engine in on your own, so you're not banging the inner wings or your paint or anything like that. I tell you something, there's quite a few score marks. I was going to say skid marks, but it might have been. But there's quite a few scratches on them, so it has saved the paint a little bit. Now's the time to look around to make sure everything's done, if you see what I mean. You know, just have a quick eyeball around, make sure all the cables are out of the way. And one important thing I've got to do, which I haven't done yet, is tip up the gearbox. I've got to tip it up because it's too far down. Right, we're about ready to get this engine in. It's got oil in it. It's ready to go. All the pipes and everything's all nice and tidy on the outside. I've moved away all the fastenings and pipes and things like this on the bell housing. I've even got my little balance beam set approximately. If you can see down here, I'm not sure if you can see, maybe it's shadowed a bit, but I've got the oh, listen to that wind. It's not me. I've got the gearbox on a axle stand, because what I did was I lifted the car up on the lift and then dropped it down onto the stand, which makes life a lot easier. Now the only downside I have with my current lift is the leg kind of catches on the tyre. It should be parallel, and it's actually in a V like this, and it makes it a pain in the backside to get in. So let's clear some stuff out here and see if we can get it in. Oh, get that one in. I replaced the hose on the power steering feed because I noticed it was all dry and it had been leaking since it was in. So I thought, well, now's the time to do it. Right, approximately eyeball it up, make sure nothing's going to catch under the wheels. Let's give it a quick push. All you need with this stand is one little pebble underneath it and it's buggered. Even the paper towel's looking a bit of a disaster. Right, where are we there? You can hear I've got a stone in this bloody wheel here. Right, now this is the thing. You've got to keep watching, keep looking. I'll tell you what, I'll put the camera over the other side and see if I can get a better angle. How's that? So obviously, we look at the faces, not Rod Stewart and the faces naturally, but we're looking at the faces of the bell housing, and we need to go down, like status quo. Wow, God, it's getting like top of the pops. Savills travels. Drop it down, and then we can have a better look and see what this angle's like. Here goes. Nothing. I might be able to see it better from this side and not get in your way. It doesn't look too bad. The problem on the swivel is it tends to move a little bit too much. And remember, the arc of the lift will drop it in an arc, it won't drop it straight down. Be good if it goes first time, wouldn't it? What can you see at the other side? You're not much of a help. Maybe that's a bit better for you, is it? Let me turn the camera on. Oh yeah, maybe you can see that. I haven't practiced this, by the way. Oops, so it hit there. It's just not going on the clutch spline, but it's early days yet. Is that? Let's push that. Lift it forward. Right. This is the problem with this lift because it springs back. Right, we just need to turn the crank a bit. Totally unprepared. Whoa, I think we're in. Just make sure. Oh, yeah, that's in. Yeah, I just want a couple of bolts on now. I don't know if you can see. I'll take the camera off, we'll have a look around this side. You see? Straight in, eh? You see what I mean about the fight you'd get against the bolts and the studs on the mountings? You see how easy it is? So all I'm going to do now is put a couple of nuts on and see if we can pull it in, because it's just not quite right on the spline. But we're right in position. We didn't even have to adjust our lift. How good was that? Right, so let's do that. Let's put some nuts on and try and pull it in. That was exciting, wasn't it? Getting the engine in to go for a lie down. Now the next thing is, you've got two options doing the studs. While the engine's lifted up on the hoist, you can put the stud back into the engine mounting and then drop it through the hole, put the nut on, and because these are lock nuts, they'll work their way up into the stud. Yeah, you can do that, it doesn't matter. Or drop the engine down and then put the studs in. Or even if you want, which is even easier still, put some bolts in. What are they, M12s? They're easy enough, aren't they? Now the next thing, whilst it's still up, this is the clever bit, we're going to do a load of jobs on this before we put it in. Now I am going to crank it over, so that means once it's up like this, we've got easier access to put the starter wire on and things like this. But also at the same time, I'm going to put the oil cooler pipes on. I'll just go and get them. Here they are. I cleaned them up in the vapor blaster. Came up really nice. Now you must wash them out and you must blow them out and let them dry. That was one of the reasons why I went for lunch. Now these have been modified somewhat, but not a big deal. They're a heavier pipe, but make sure the nuts turn freely like that. Look, always make sure they turn freely, because they are so easy to strip in the housing. And if you strip the thread in the housing, that's the injector pump off, because the bolts are behind the injector pump and they're a bitch to get out. What I'm going to do to prep these up, come down here a bit, just a little wee bit of thread guard on there, thread guard on here, maybe a bit on the nut, why not, eh? That's just to get them, stop the muck getting in behind them and the oil and, you know, stuff. Well, not so much, but stop water getting in and things like that. Don't need much. I'm not going to do the radiator end yet, because I'm going to do a pipe on it. I have to put the pipes on because I'm going to crank the engine. Now I've got some, I always put new O-rings on these. These are ESR 1594L. I can get them out of there. You need plastic bags there, you just open them up and they all go on the floor. So put a couple of O-rings on. And of course you have made sure that the old O-ring's still not in the oil filter. In the oil filter housing, I already took them out. So I'm going to just switch off for a while because there's nothing to really film. I'm going to put the bolts in the engine mountings now. A little top tip again is that I didn't fasten up the bolts in the gearbox mounting. I let them run free. And I think that's why sometimes people have a difficulty getting the engine to line back up again. Now it's lifted up, I can pull it backwards and forwards and drop it straight down. So that's going to be good. So let me get on with those jobs and then we can sort of drop it down and start putting bits and pieces back on. Pretty easy, eh? So with the engine lifted up, I was able to put the exhaust on quite easy, wasn't struggling on with that. I've already cranked the engine over, so there's oil coming out of that, but I'll show you that in a minute. Got the starter wires on, but I haven't clipped them up, but I wanted to see if there was oil coming through here, which it is perfectly. I've put the power steering pump back on. The hose is a bit stretchy, but it will do. I've got the pipes here linked up for testing the oil pressure. Well, not oil pressure as such, but to circulate the engine. Now you're going to ask me, why didn't I put the pipes on before I fitted the engine? Well, these, like I said to you before, these are really heavy pipes, and they were not very flexible, so I put them on last. That's why I did them like that. I've got the engine mounting studs back in. There's quite a lot of space there to work. Oh, you can't really see, can you? Where's my flashlight? It's not here. That's probably a better view. You can see the studs now. The engine just needs shimmying over a bit, and then that will go in, and that's it. So I'll set the camera up and you can watch the oil come through. How fun is that? Actually, I should be able to do it from here. Nice, a lot of oil there, that's good. So that's a good indication oil's getting around the system and on the floor. So we can actually drop this down, but first of all, I know these are a bit haphazard videos because I'm in a bit of a rush, but first of all, got to take that stand out that's holding the bell housing up. Do that, drop it down. Right, I realised I had bloody chilli sauce on my chin. Right, that's got nothing to do with it. Pump on. I'm going to do the water pump in a minute. Well, I'm going to change that over because this one doesn't sound as good as a new one, so I'm going to put a new one on. I think it'll stand it. We'll keep that one for good spare. So that's it, let's drop it down. Right, don't let me down. There we go. Now I have to just push it that way a bit. The eagle has landed. Let's get that off. Take it off a bit more first, Michael. That's that off. Get this out the way. Yeah, we can take that down completely, save me banging my head on it again. Get this off. That's the jack going down, not me. That was a really good thing to modernise, was that. I was really pleased about that. It's only taken me 10 years. So now you can see everything sort of jives together. I've got the crank bolt to tighten up. Pipes to go on, wires. That's about it. So let me get on with that, and then I can lift up the car, because I've only got the few bolts. I've got about 6 bolts around the bell housing at the top. I need to put the bottom ones in, but they'll line up quite nice. Yeah, well, that's interesting, isn't it? Ah, it looks good, doesn't it, eh? Doesn't it look good? Yeah, pipe work. But there's not them pipes and wires and stuff like that. That's pretty much self-explanatory. Yeah, we'll come back. We'll come back and have a look, see what we're going on. But like I say, I did take the expansion tank off because, like I said, to get the engine in really smooth, the injector pump sometimes gets very close to the tank, and since it's only a few captive nuts to, like nuts to spin out, it's not too bad. Right, let's get on with that.